To be safe on the water, you need to prepare for it. And in this video, we'll share 10 essential tips to ensure you and your group have an amazing and secure paddling experience. Before we dive into these tips, if you need to get set up without any hassle, just head to our retail store Coast Outdoors and the staff there will set you up with every piece of clothing and accessory you could possibly need, and they'll answer any specific question that you might have. Check the link in the description for more details. And without further ado, let's get into our first tip. Tip number 1, understand the weather and what can happen while paddling. It's important to realize that the temperature of the water is different to the temperature of the air. And because it is possible to capsize when paddling, you need to be dressed for the water temperature and not the air temperature. What's more, the weather can change fast and dramatically, and so it's important that you have an understanding of this because it will help you prepare and pick the right gear. Tip number 2, charge your phone before you arrive and secure it in a phone dry bag. It's important to always have a phone on you because this adds an extra layer of security. If you don't have a phone dry bag, you can rent one at any of our rental locations, or you can head to Coast Outdoors to buy your own. Tip number 3, avoid cotton. This is the most common mistake people make. Cardigans, wrong. Cotton t-shirt, wrong. Jeans, wrong. If you're dressed like you're going out to a restaurant, you're dressed the wrong way. You should instead look like someone that's about to do an outdoor activity, because that's exactly what you're about to do. Tip number 4, wear breathable sport clothing. So that means quick drying, sweat wicking fabrics such as nylon and polyester. So quick drying fabrics are the types you'd wear while exercising. So think layers such as Lululemon, Solomon, Icebreaker. They're comfortable, stretchy, and they're the type of clothing perhaps you'd pick if you were going hiking somewhere. If you don't have any breathable sport clothing, wool insulates well when wet, so it's also a good choice. Tip number 5, bring layers. Having layers means you can adapt to changing weather conditions. While you are out paddling, you can peel them off if you're getting hot, or you can put them back on if it's getting cold or wet. Now we'll talk about footwear and headwear later, but there are 3 core layers to consider: base layers, insulation, and outerwear. Core layer number 1, base layers. For your base layers in cold/mild conditions, we recommend you pick synthetic fabrics made out of polyester or nylon. Thick rash guards or neoprene layers such as Vycobi or NRS are ideal if you have them. If you don't have any of the above mentioned items, wool is a great alternative. Many people pick merino wool as their base layer in mild and cold conditions. If it's a hot summer day, swimwear works great. So perhaps you have a swimsuit as your base layer, or you could turn to board shorts and a light rash guard. Core layer number 2, insulation. So insulation is the main heat generating layer, and it sits in between your base layer and your outer layer. So good insulation can be achieved by wearing multiple breathable sporty layers. Another good option for insulation if you don't have all those layers is a fleece. When it comes to your pants, aim for comfortable, quick drying options. So again, no cotton, no jeans. Pants that you would jog in or go hiking in are great picks. Another bonus option, if you have any waterproof pants perhaps that you use to cycle into work in the rain, they work really well for the cold or mild wet days when you're out paddling. For those warmer days, again, look to wear breathable, quick drying activewear to help regulate your temperature. If you had a breathable t-shirt or perhaps even a long sleeve breathable shirt, this complements well as an insulating layer in the summer days. Please note that if it's particularly hot and you are only wearing swimwear or perhaps just board shorts and a t-shirt, that you can bring these extra insulation layers with you, put them in a dry bag and bring them in your kayak. This is handy in case the weather changes or perhaps you capsize, and then at which point you can turn to these insulation layers to keep you warm. The last of our core layers is the outerwear. So remember, in tip 1 we said that the weather can change fast and dramatically. That means that you can be enjoying a hot summer day and all of a sudden the rain and wind can hit, making things cold and wet. So even in the summer, it's important to bring a waterproof jacket or a shell. On those colder days where it's perhaps raining or mild, we recommend having a thicker outer layer. This will ensure that you are protected from the elements whilst also adding an additional layer of warmth to your body. Now that we've covered those 3 core layers, let's talk about your head, feet, and hands.
We recommend a baseball cap at all times, and
we also recommend bringing a non-cotton toque.
And of course you can store that inside your dry bag. Now let's talk footwear.
Neoprene booties are ideal here.
But if you've got any old running shoes, they will suffice.
Now quick note, don't use flip-flops or footwear that doesn't have a back strap by the heel, because they'll just fall off and they'll be pretty pointless.
Now let's talk about protecting your hands.
So some paddlers use paddling gloves and they help protect against blisters and they keep your hands warmer on colder days. Now most people that rent with us, whether it's a hot day or if it's a cold day, don't use paddling gloves.
But if it's particularly cold, just know that you can rent pogies with us.
Tip number 6. You can rent a wetsuit. So if you don't have any of the layers that we mentioned above, please know that our waterfront locations all provide wetsuits as a rental service. Tip number 7, use a dry bag. So whether you're kayaking or on a paddleboard, please know that your clothing will get wet if you use a standard bag, especially if you're trying to put them into the compartments of the kayak. We recommend using a dry bag to ensure that all your items, such as clothing and valuables, stay dry. Tip number 8, keep your PFD on. When you rent here, we provide you with a PFD. It is mandatory to wear a PFD.
But another reason you should keep your PFD on is that it keeps you warm, especially if you capsize. And another side note, you must zip the PFD up or it will not work if you end up in the water.
Tip number 9, protect yourself from the sun. Now you'll have hats, we recommend shades, but sun cream is such an important part, even on the days where it's mild and overcast. And finally, tip number 10, make sure you understand the safety talk before you start paddling. If anything in our safety talk is confusing to you, please mention and we'll be happy to explain things in further detail. And that wraps up our 10 pre-paddle preparation tips. Thanks for watching.